Welcome back to day 9 of Witchtober. So today I wanted to talk and just, I don't have like a complete absolute opinion on this, so it's one that I'm kind of posing out to y'all who are watching, but basically we kind of come down to this point of, do you pick a specific deity that is related to the task you are doing, like your spell work or whatever, or do you stick with the one you already have a relationship with? So I've done this both ways, and sometimes I lean towards like you should use a deity that like rules over that specific thing. Like, you know, of course we think of like the commerce deities that would be good for like your business, but also for me, I've always kind of come to this point of like, when like death happens, which unfortunately has been pretty much every year for like 7 years now, or 6 years, something like, it's been a continuous stream every year. I don't love it, but that's the unfortunate reality of having older people in your life. And so when every death happens, whether it's pets or people or whatever, I instantly typically will lean to both ways. So it's kind of become one and the same at this point, but I've worked with the Morrigan first and foremost for a long time, and I have a video coming up on that. Somebody asked me to talk about it, so that'll be coming up soon. But of course, you have to save that for the 13th, the Morrigan, the 13th, obviously. So that's coming. But I've worked with the Morrigan for a long time. And of course, she's a death deity, so it's like, yeah, of course, be here, please. And having built a relationship with her, of course she's gonna show up. That's what happens when you build a relationship with anything in your life. If then something happens, they will show up. Just like if your friend is like having a really hard time and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll help. I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together. It'll be fine. And then, you know, you want to help them. I feel like that's what happens with deities. You could be working with a different one. I don't know why this camera is doing it. It wants to focus right here. I'm sorry if I get out of focus. It's just decided this square, I don't know why, this is where it needs to focus. So if I'm out of focus, I'm sorry. It just keeps like squaring right here, and it's like, right here is great, right here. I don't know why. I'm not super tech savvy, I don't know. It just flashes it over here. Don't know why. Anyways, so, you know, I'll often call to the Morrigan because I've built that relationship with her, and in times of crisis, I don't care. I don't need to be introducing myself to someone new. I just want to have somebody that I already know to come and help, who I know will be there to help. Hence my relationship with the Morrigan. I've worked with her for like over a decade now. And so obviously instant to her. But then also like same category, sometimes other deities will step in and it's like, this one makes way more sense. You know, when I had my, again, I'm just big on death. Obviously, that's just one of my focuses. And so when like my grandpa passed away in 2020, I didn't feel called to work with Morrigan at all. Instead, it was Odin, who often takes, and it's, I don't know, it's more of a neo thing. It's not old school. We've reestablished different things. And again, this is why I don't talk about the Norse stuff too much, because that community's toxic. But for a lot of us who aren't psychotic, Odin typically also applies to like first responders and, you know, people who are in firefighting, for police work, for whatever, that kind of stuff on top of like army stuff. And you don't necessarily have to die in battle, kind of a thing. And so, like, Odin came very powerful for that time. And then, like other deaths, I've wanted a very comforting, calm vibe. And so I've turned to Hel. And, you know, I've gone back and forth a lot of different times. And, like, you know, on less very life or death, you know, working with deities for magic involving, like, my work, you know, I could pick, I usually choose Norse deities. So, like, Bragi. Probably mispronouncing it because I don't speak the language, but he's like a god of writing and poetry. Also, you could use Odin. Like, there's a lot that you could choose that are specific. You could also look into like the business side of it with like Njord. Like, there's a lot of different deities where it's like, oh, well, that one would make sense. But then it's like the random ones that you're like, oh, actually, like, I found that mostly in life right now, I'm really being drawn to different deities that I wouldn't anticipate, but end up being more helpful. And so when I do a spell, typically, I tend to pick the deities that I'm currently building a relationship with. For instance, again, Hell is one that I am working with a lot. And, you know, I'm also working with like Freya and Frey, and like those aren't necessarily like any deity you would typically kind of think of for like an author, you know, it's not really the ones that come to mind at all. And yet they're the ones that I work with the most. And so I'm just curious what you guys do. Like, cause some of the times like I feel real weird being like, okay, Aphrodite, I want to work on self-love. I haven't talked to you like ever, but we're gonna work together. Or like, hey Artemis, I want to start working with, notice how I always pick the Greeks, because like I never do anything with them ever, really. But it's like, you know, like, hey Zeus, sup, dude? I don't know what I would call on him for, but we're gonna assume that some spell told me to work with him, and I just call him up and be like, hey, I need you for this specific thing that you were supposed to rule over. It just feels weird to me. Like, I want to build a relationship before I start asking things, and instead I would rather, no matter what, again, instead of a self-love spell going to Aphrodite to be like, hey, I wanna work with you for this because this is what you rule over, I would happily go to Hell and be like, hey, listen, because pretty much any of the deities, I feel like you can finagle your way through, find some stories, some UPG something to connect them to pretty much any part of the human experience. And so like, obviously, if you look at Hell, you then compare her gist to like Santa Muerte, because I feel like those two are like death soul sisters. Like, they have such a similar vibe in so many ways. It's just this like calm, but like, they're like powerful deities. They like just, they have this thing, but ruling over death, one of their big things is like making life enjoyable. It's weird, but it fits very well with Hell, who's half alive, half dead. And so like, yeah, of course, self-love, why not? That's the thing that would fit into her categories, you know? At least it works in my brain. Like, she wants you to enjoy your life before you come into her realms, so yeah, she will help you with that. And I don't know, I'm personally on team the deities can talk to each other and be like, hey, I don't got this. Like, they, I don't feel like, are afraid to ask favors of other deities to help with whatever the situation is. And I feel like having that built-in relationship that you've already maintained and then asking for random stuff, even if it doesn't really fall into their category, they're more likely to help you with it or figure out a way to get it done, because again, they're deities, versus some spell tells you to call in some random just because, and like, that's just what you do. I don't know, it's always bothered me. And like, sometimes I will try and I'll build a relationship before I start working on it, or I'll like start a relationship with that intention. They never pan out as well as the ones that just genuinely start, and then random things pop up and it's like, I need your help with this. Those seem to go better for me. But I would love to know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons. If you would like to support me and get access to exclusive content, it's patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, blessed be. Hopefully I can figure out how to make it stop focusing right here. Why right here? Like, there's nothing. There's nothing. Why?